Hey there. Welcome to something unrelated. We're finally doing that random podcast that we talked about doing where we're not necessarily going to talk about world building. We're just going to chit-chat. So each time we're going to kind of bring one idea and we're going to do a little bit of research about it and then just kind of shoot from the hip. So this is going to be the first episode of just kind of our unrelated podcast, our simply chillin' podcast, or whatever it may end up being. But thanks for tuning in. Today, the topic that I brought was the big one, the earthquake.
Well, I mean, why don't we just start from there and see where it takes us?
Sure, sounds good. I mean, it's probably in the title anyway.
Yeah, no kidding. But yeah, like, I mean, I've only briefly heard of that as a topic. Like, I've heard of, like, super volcano earthquakes or and stuff like that. But, like, in what regard?
So, if you are a, like, West Coaster, you probably, have heard of this. The big one, the earthquake, basically is because the entire, like, Pacific Ring of Fire has a multitude of like fault lines because there's like one big old plate there and then it meets up with all the other plates. And the idea of the big one is that here on the West Coast, I think it stretches from, like, technically I think it kind of stretches from, like, Alaska down to, like, probably Mexico. But the big area where it's a problem is where there's the Cascadia subduction zone. And it's where the Juan de Fuca plate from the Pacific Ocean is going underneath the, I believe it's the North American plate.
Okay.
But there's a stretch here from, as you know if you've been following our channel, we are Canadian and we're West Coasters. So we're right in the prime hotspot because on the west coast of Canada specifically, and then a little bit into, like, Washington State. Is the worst part of this, like, subduction zone.
Okay.
And it there's, like, evidence that give or take every, like, 300 to 500 years, there's a mega thrust earthquake, which is the most aggressive kind of earthquake there can be, where, like, one plate is going under the other, and then it kind of, like, there's resistance and there's resistance over years and years and years, and then in one, like, snap motion, it just launches the entire way up, and that can create the most violent earthquakes.
Interesting.
So, it has been, I think, 320, 350 years or so since the last one, and it happens every 300 to 500 years when they look back at different, geographical dating things and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so,
totally.
In theory, this will be happening, or should by all means be happening, anytime within the next 100 years. But it could be any moment. And it's, been potentially any moment for a long time.
Yeah.
But the longer that it goes without happening,
Yeah.
or the longer it goes without any earthquake, which we don't really get here,
Yeah.
the worse it's gonna be because it's not relieving that pressure.
Yeah, totally.
So scientists are saying if this goes at this point, it's likely going to be above a 9.0 on the Richter scale.
Wow.
Which is very, very bad.
Yeah.
Because I think there's only like 5 ever earthquakes that have been above a 9.
Wow.
And they're always horrific.
Yeah, no kidding.
Because we're talking, like, where we're at here, it's going to create, like first off, a 9.0 to, like, 9.5 earthquake. 9.5 is the worst that's ever happened from what I could tell. So, horrifically bad earthquake. And then with how much the plates are going to, like, sort of snap and readjust, it's going to create, give or take, like 10 to 15 meter tall waves, tsunamis.
Wow. Yeah.
And that's going to come largely back inland.
Yeah.
And it's going to be like, 15 meter, so what is that, like 50 feet tsunami? All along the west coast from, like, northern British Columbia down to, like, I think it hits California, but the worst of it is, like, Washington State and British Columbia.
Interesting.
And so they're still going to feel the earthquake there because it's going to be a big one.
Yeah, no kidding.
Hence the name.
Yeah, it's in the name. Yeah.
Yeah, but then the tsunami will still reach there, and the tsunami also is going to make it across the entire ocean and affect places like Japan, China, Korea, any coastal areas there with an enormous tsunami.
Yeah, they really do get the worst of it over there.
They get the worst. Yeah, they have a lot more earthquakes, so a lot more tsunamis, but not often this big. I think that's only happened like one time.
Yeah.
But a couple of little numbers for you to throw out there is every time there's been a 9.0 earthquake or bigger, other than I think once, which was like a little bit more out there, less populated areas.
Yeah.
There's thousands and thousands and thousands of people killed, and like hundreds of millions of dollars worth of damage.
Yeah, no kidding.
And that is like just the earthquake, and then the tsunami kills thousands and thousands more. There was one in Sumeria.
Okay.
And it killed, I think this one was like a 9.3, which is kind of right in the range of where this one would likely be, potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, bummer topic, by the way, guys, but happy spooky season anyway.
Yeah.
It killed, I think it was somewhere like, I think it mostly from the tsunami.
Yeah.
Something like 300,000 people.
That's fucking insane.
Yeah. So if/when this happens, it will be the worst catastrophe to ever happen in North America, or at least in like written history. And it's pretty much guaranteed to happen, which is why it's so scary. This is a topic I want to talk about for a long time because every year, 1 to 2 nights, I lose a lot of sleep thinking about it. Because every year, like not even at a specific time or anything, I just remember that that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And then I sit there and I Google like, oh, where's the tsunami zone? How far does it go inland? How like am I safe and all this kind of stuff? And I lose sleep.
Yeah.
And
it's like when you're a kid and your teacher tells you that eventually the sun's going to explode.
Yeah, exactly.
You're just like,
yeah. Yeah, so
shakes you.
The one, I mean, there's a lot of bad news, but the one good news is it shouldn't be like the earthquake will be really bad for Vancouver, which is the biggest like population center here. That'll be very bad, but the tsunami shouldn't be that terrible in Vancouver because of the like Vancouver Island and stuff like that. The way the shape of the bay is,
interesting.
It's gonna mostly affect like the most western portion of Vancouver Island, and then. Sorry, bad news. People living in Washington State. It's gonna
get deflected.
It's gonna not quite, a little bit, but they're gonna get it because they don't really have any shield like that.
Yeah, no kidding.
And also a lot of like the West Coast, not all of it. I'm not super up on my geography for the states, but I know that there's a lot of portions along the West Coast that are very flat, and so there's some areas in I think like Oregon where the 15-meter tsunami is going to go inland like dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of kilometers because of how tall it is.
Yeah.
And it'll like affect the entire population center of those states essentially. Yeah. Because of just how flat it is. So it'll go over like multiple cities. Yeah. And there's no real way. I think it's like, give or take, the tsunami is going to take about like 5 to 10, maybe 15 minutes to touch land. And it travels at like 500 kilometers an hour. Or 500 miles, but I think 500 kilometers an hour. It's as fast as like a 737, apparently.
That's crazy.
Very fast.
Sonic the Hedgehog is not outrunning this tsunami.
No chili dogs can save us from this one. But there is not really anything other than a plane that is able to get you away from the coast fast enough in places like Oregon and stuff like that. Yeah. To outrun the wave. So and like
God knows, even if you're trying to get on a plane, you're just going to spend that time boarding.
You're sitting there in the TSA and they're like, actually, your water bottle has to be emptied, laptop's out of the bag, and then is this in a 35 milliliter tub? It says here 37, so you're gonna have to dump that out. Like, guys, there's a tsunami. Yeah. So yeah, the bummer about that is that there's no amount of forewarning can really kind of save the people there. Yeah, like unless you get to high ground on a sturdy structure, there's not really any way to outrun that in certain areas. So basically big one bad is what
Yeah,
I'm saying, and
no
it's
kidding.
really scary. And that's not even counting the fact that like with earthquakes of any size, let alone mega thrust earthquakes of 9.5 on the Richter scale, set off other things. So you've got big earthquake, lots of people die.
Yeah.
A big tsunami that possibly hundreds of thousands of people die. And then you also have to now worry about, because we're on the Ring of Fire, that there are volcanoes in British Columbia. There are like basically all down the west coast. We're still in the Ring of Fire. So you have volcanoes like Yellowstone that are dormant but can become active. And if something this big and impactful happens, it can reactivate volcanoes.
Yeah, totally.
And another like world-ending situation is the Yellowstone eruption.
Yeah.
So if this happens and it takes out like all of the Pacific, and then Yellowstone goes off, and it like it spread, because the last time apparently that Yellowstone went off, I think this is right, it actually plunged the entire world into darkness, and crops fail, and you get like brutal, basically nuclear winters, and like it's just a worldwide catastrophe where hundreds of thousands, if not more, will die from things like terrible weather or starvation or stuff like that.
Yeah, this is the thing though. When I thought you were referencing the big one, the Yellowstone eruption is what I thought you were referencing.
Not specifically, but it is a potential that I haven't personally backed by science. It may not affect that.
Well, this was kind of the thing. Is like there's a lot more division on that topic, at least from what I've read, than is portrayed often, because it's such a fascinating thing to buy into. Like, yeah, the idea of just a super volcano, and everyone loves a good apocalypse.
Yeah.
But from what I've heard, and I don't remember the numbers on this because I did do the research on this like a while ago, but there's kind of just as many signs pointing to Yellowstone actually quieting down as a volcano rather than ramping up. And so a lot of people are like, oh, it's inevitable, especially because like people are like counting the last handful of times it did erupt.
Yeah.
But I think like they're only counting, I think, like the last two or three, and the ones before that are incredibly inconsistent.
Right.
And so it's like, okay, so that you're basing the consistency and like, oh, we're overdue on very limited data, or like you're cherry picking the data.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was something to do with basically how like the patterns of the molten rock that is within Yellowstone actually provides more signs that it's actually chilling out as a volcano rather than increasing in its hostility.
I don't necessarily know a ton about volcanoes as a whole, but this might be straight up misinformation. I apologize if it is. From what I understand, it's that like it's basically from a crack or a hole in the like Earth's crust that allows magma to bubble up from inside. And in theory, over time, that should like kind of shift away, right?
It depends on how the plate that the volcano is in is moving.
Yeah.
Like Hawaii is everyone's favorite example,
Yeah.
because of constant eruptions creating the islands, and so that's again like everyone's favorite example. But I think in the there's also the question of like if there's actually pressure forcing it to the surface.
Yeah,
as well.
right.
And I think that was another thing with Yellowstone. It's like there is a lot of magma under there, but it doesn't have any reason to leave. Like it doesn't have anything forcing it up. Now, hey, gigantic earthquake, who knows?
Yes.
But
yes.
But all from what I've seen, it's like there is some evidence you can find to say one argument and some to the other, but people like to do the catastrophizing because
Totally.
Why the fuck wouldn't you?
Now, in my not an expert opinion, I would actually think that if that's the case, this might not be how it works at all, but I don't think that it would add like pressure to like magma as like a liquid. Like, you know, the rules of like displacement and stuff, because the plates, the way they're moving is like the Wanda Fuca plate is already going under. That's not the problem. So like it's adding as much pressure as it has been always. The problem is like the North American plate that is snagged.
bending to yeah.
So it'll launch up and displace water, but it's not going to like at the same point launch the Wanda Fuca plate further down, because it is not having a problem moving. So it's the top plate that is going to launch up and displace water. That's our problem as humans. But I don't think that there's going to be any necessarily like added pressure or reason for magma to leave the core of the Earth. Other than the fact that, you have a 9.5 earthquake.
Well, yeah, and again, like earthquake is a broad term when it comes down to like what's actually happening beneath.
Totally.
Like there's so many different ways for plates to interact and for that to
tons of kinds
to cause.
of earthquake.
So, but that was just something I had at least heard heard and read briefly about in the last, I think it was like the last 4 to 6 months. So this is why this information isn't freshly on my brain. But so at least in the regards to there being a fun volcanic cherry on top of this earthquake, I'm less sure of that.
Well, me as well. That's always a part that like I don't really do much looking into when I'm doing my doom scrolling and losing sleep. I have not put that pressure on myself of like the added volcanoes. So that's just something that I, thought of pretty much right now.
Yeah, no kidding.
Because I know that happens in the past and stuff. Earthquakes can trigger volcanic eruptions.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But it may not be as big of a deal as triggering, the Yellowstone mega eruption or whatever. Just thought it would be a fun thing to throw on top.
Volcanic cherry on top.
Yeah,
no kidding. No, it's fascinating to think of how the Earth is constantly moving. This is kind of an interesting thing. Like, I mean, we even kind of integrated that into the map when we were building it.
Yeah, we talked about plate tectonics and stuff at least a little bit.
And like it's a lot to think of when you're trying to make a world and everything like that. Like, how detailed do you really have to be? You have to consider that. But yeah, the fact that it's like, no, you're not sitting on solid ground. You're actually basically sitting on a gigantic dirt island that's constantly shifting around and grinding up against the other ones. Like,
and guess what's under there?
Yeah.
Bad stuff.
Yeah, the floor is lava.
Yeah.
And you're just riding on a gigantic plate tectonic couch.
And your little safety island bumps into other ones, and it could very well be slipping underneath another one and technically then go into the magma and become the magma afterwards, which is fun. But on the bright side, though, I have heard that... I don't know if it's all plates or if it's these ones in particular.
Yeah.
They move at like... basically like a couple inches like a year. It's apparently like give or take like the same speed that your fingernails grow is how fast they move. So very, very slow, but in the grand scheme of things also like if you are going 300 to 500 years in between these like mega thrust earthquakes, in 500 years that's 500 inches or 1,000 inches of land that is now going to flick back up in like 2 seconds.
In a violent manner,
And so you're going to have 500 inches of splashed water moving at 500 kilometers an hour towards,
well, this is also
Tokyo.
You can think of your fingernails and be like, oh, that's not a big deal. But it's like, no, it's fingernail speed, but it's the pressure of an entire
continent.
Yeah, exactly. Just pressing down on you. So it's like it's both a comforting thought when it comes down to the speed, but it's like, again, you think about it deeper and it's like, but the amount of pressure isn't quantified by the speed of it. So it's like, it's both comforting and not, because it's like, it is slow, so who knows?
Slow.
But on the bright side, it's going to happen the day after I die.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, everybody.
That's what I'm going to, that's how I'm going to sleep.
Yeah. why bother even making a savings account?
Yeah. No, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna spend my money and die.
Yeah. There's not going to be anything left over afterwards because
Yeah.
the day after is when all the bad stuff's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
It's fantastic.
it's a good way to look at it.
I'm really lucky that way.
Yeah, that's really nice for you. I hope I die first.
Yeah.
Race ya.
Yeah, exactly. Speedrun.
Yeah, so yeah, any percent.
Yeah, but no, like it's so crazy to think about the chain reactions that can happen on
Yeah.
Earth in that sort of manner as well.
Yeah, well, because now I'm shifting a little bit to like the Yellowstone idea.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that it was Yellowstone. I think it was maybe like Mount St. Helens or something like that. It could be any other volcano. There's quite a few of them.
Yeah, there's one or two lying around.
But I'm pretty sure this also could be wrong too. I occasionally just go down rabbit holes on YouTube.
Who doesn't?
But I think it was straight up in the times of the Black Plague, or maybe it was just another shitty time in medieval days.
Yeah.
Where an enormous eruption happened, and then it blots out the sun, and people die, and crops fail, and then disease spreads because of all this death and malnourishment and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that's just one volcano, man, and there's so many volcanoes.
Yeah.
And that can just happen. It can, like, one volcano in... I don't think there's any volcanoes in Ohio, but I'm going to say one volcano in Ohio could cover the entire Earth in ash, and everybody's crops fail, and everybody dies and suffers and has a bad time because one volcano went off. It's nuts.
Well, it is. You have to think of that even more now because of how global the economy is.
Totally.
Because like if you considered like stuff that happens across the world affects us here now, and like that has sort of in a roundabout way kind of always been the case, but like really not
More
as much
now than ever, for sure, yeah.
Well, because, like, I mean, fucking Christ, a boat got stuck in a canal, and all of a sudden, I don't get my shit from Amazon.
Yeah. I don't get my Simply World Building merch on time.
Yeah, no, exactly. but like that's the thing is like it's literally like it what feels like such a minor problem or like something that like you'd have to deal with on the other end of the world, but it's such a like it just affects everywhere now.
Yeah.
And so this is the problem.
Shit, like, we won't talk about, bad things happening in politics. I don't know if the W word triggers YouTube to not push our stuff or whatever.
Willy
But
Wonka?
Yeah. But let's say that something bad happens in Russia or Ukraine or something like that, for instance, for example. And then, like... Or let's say even just the power goes out, like, in a port in Lithuania.
Yeah.
And then, like, all of a sudden, like, global gas prices go up by, like, 25% because there was, like, a power outage at a port.
Yeah.
And, like, a little bit of gas got a little bit delayed.
Yeah.
Like, so now imagine that something enormous happens. Yeah, man, that's a big impact on everybody everywhere.
Well, like even like it's local enough where you can even consider the fact that it's like, okay, well, you go to the grocery store and they're like, oh man, we have pineapples and bananas. It's like those don't grow here.
Yep.
Or at least not for us. Like I don't know where the hell you guys live. But
A bunch of places. That's actually really cool to look at the stats on that.
That was
Super
kind of a fun thing to discover. But
Didn't we have a bunch of people in Australia?
Yeah, actually Australia.
yeah, like exactly.
Shout
it's
out.
like, oh man, shout out Southern Hemisphere.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
I want to go to Australia.
I mean, yeah, that is you got you're almost fully equipped.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, wait, real quick, veering off the topic here. Speaking of Australia and tectonic plates, I found out that I'm pretty sure this is true again. I'm just saying things.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not certified in any way. We're just
That's
guys
it, yeah.
on the internet.
I'm not a professional, man. But I'm pretty sure that Australia and the Australian tectonic plate cuts off just before New Zealand.
Really?
So New Zealand is not actually technically on, like, the Australian continent.
Interesting.
But they're also not on any other, like, continent. So depending on how you define the word continent and stuff like that, they're considered to be in Oceania.
Interesting.
But they're not on the same plate as, like, Australia and stuff like that.
Interesting.
So, yeah, it's just kind of weird to see that, like, despite them really only being that far away on a map, like 1 digit of my finger away, they are they're not connected to that landmass. They're kind of just chilling out there in the middle of the ocean.
That is
unconnected to any other continent or
no kidding.
continental plate. That might not be true. Maybe they're on somebody else's plate that I'm not aware of, but apparently not the Australian one.
But yeah, nonetheless, like you can go and find bananas and pineapples and stuff that you just don't see. And so you like, it's weird to consider the fact that it's like, oh yeah, like, man, all the bananas got fucked up.
Yeah.
And now you just don't get them.
Yeah.
Like we're so much more interconnected than ever.
Man, it's a good thing that we've warned everybody this is an Unrelated Things podcast, because speaking of bananas, aren't there like 2 kinds of bananas? And so like...
Yeah, there's green and yellow.
Nice. Got them. There's also brown.
And black.
Can't forget.
Yeah, there's a few different...
And bread.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
mushed.
banana bread, yep.
And on peanut butter toast.
And sliced.
Yep. On peanut butter toast. Sliced,
Ooh, yeah, that's a good combo.
Oh, that goes hard. That's a good combo.
I was gonna bring up banana muffins, but then
That's bread.
That made me think of the pumpkin muffins that that I found at the grocery store yesterday.
Yeah. Pumpkin season's good season. 2 kinds of bananas in theory. Two like strains of bananas.
Yeah.
And we have seen a bunch of times where like one like genetic species of crop just all of a sudden like gets a disease or something bad happens to one strain.
Yeah.
So there's like 2 and one is vastly bigger than the other one.
Yeah.
And if that just happened, then all of a sudden bananas are like kind of that close to being extinct. There's like seed storages and stuff like that.
There's only so much we can do about the whole thing. Like it's such an insane thing to think about. Yeah.
Yeah, bananas are very close to going extinct. By that metric,
all you need is one thing that affects all of them. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, okay. I'm going to talk a little bit about specific Canadian issues that maybe other places have as well. We got a lot of wood here, a lot of lumber. And it gets cut down a lot because we've got a big lumber exporting thing, and then it gets replanted, and it's all one kind of tree usually. And so one of the things that we battle with here is things like pine beetles.
Yes.
Which eat certain kinds of pine trees, and they're very, very bad for them. They can wipe out entire, forests and stuff. That's not necessarily a problem if you have mixed forests that happen naturally, but when you plant one entire forest, like replanted forest, of the same kind of pine, and then the beetle comes in and kills every single one, that's catastrophic.
Yeah.
And that could happen to your bananas, folks. So...
The banana beetle.
Yeah, for real. Banana spiders.
Yeah.
Google it.
Don't.
Scared the hell out of me when I was younger.
Oh, frick. Oh, my God. I remember this one time... This was one of the worst experiences of me ever, reading a book in school. Sounds very off, but, it was just, I don't even fucking remember what it was. But it was like some sort of, Ripley's Believe It or Not kind of book, or Guinness Book of World. I don't know, just one of those big books with a lot of info in it. And so I'm just flipping through, and I see these weird worms. And they were just particularly gross to me. I'm just like, oh God, I hate those. And then the teacher's assistant, who's just walking around and looking at stuff, she's like, oh yeah, those eat bread and stuff. You could find those in cereal. And I did not eat cereal for so fucking long because of that. I'm not sure if she was just trolling me or what, but I'm just that was the worst possible timing and combination of words.
Those things grow specifically off of the marshmallows in Lucky Charms, hey?
Yeah.
You having eaten Lucky Charms that morning is oh man.
Oh, exactly.
I don't feel so good.
Yeah. Oh my God. Fuck that.
Yeah.
But yeah, just the fucking domino chain. Of just how everything works now.
One thing affecting everything else. To kind of reel it back into the actual topic a little bit. Yeah.
But just especially when it comes down to trade and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I feel like we've seen so much of that in the last recent years. Whether I'm not necessarily subscribing to the fact that it's like, now more than ever, crazy things are happening. I'm like, no, crazy things have happened all over the...
Crazy things be happening, but we definitely see them more.
Well, that's exactly it. It's like, it's so much more documented is the thing, and it can travel from one side of the earth to the other so quickly.
Yeah.
And so here we are, like, seeing more catastrophes than ever. And so I think it makes people feel like more is happening than ever, when in actuality it's probably about the same. But it does, but because that information travels quickly, it makes you so much more hyper aware of how these things can affect each other. Because several hundred years ago, if there was like some sort of freaking banana famine or something like that, you'd hear about it like next year.
Yeah.
Like on our side of the world, you'd just be like,
bananas? Never heard of them.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you'd just be like, man, like, why are there no bananas showing up? And a guy on a boat would tell you.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, oh, he's the guy who sailed from one end to the other, and he's just like, oh, well, this thing happened, or this guy told me. And even then, it's hearsay, so who knows how far it travels without changing. And so, like, freaking crazy earthquake happens, and then all of a sudden, like, even regarding the quote-unquote tsunami that would happen from this earthquake, like, it would affect the other side of the world.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's just like this crazy global event, and no one would have any idea that they're related.
Yeah. Yeah, well, because I think these numbers are probably not correct, but I think it like, within a day, if the big one, earthquake, happened, I'm pretty sure it would hit, like, mainland China and, like, Japan and Korea and stuff within the day. And they probably, well, you still get pings like something terrible has happened in the world, but, like, they might not have heard that something's happened, and then, like, all of a sudden these, like, alarms start going off, and they're like, oh, we got 10 minutes until one of the biggest tsunamis that's ever happened hits? Brutal, man, yeah.
And, so, yeah, exactly. It's just everything feels more connected now when it comes down to that sort of thing.
If you have a thought, chase it. But I got something I wanna.
No, shoot!
Cool.
I'm sitting here thinking about, like, the interconnectivity
of
our entire world.
Lines.
Yeah.
Speaking of catastrophes, real quick,
and other bright topics.
Yeah. Happy spooky season. So, what do you think are, like? Not to necessarily make a tier list out of it, but, like, what is like, what are the worst / the best, by any metric you want, catastrophes? Because some of them are, like, really horrific, but also kind of metal. And some of them are just bad, they're just unpleasant.
Hence
some of
the
them
any
are
metric.
Like, yeah. Some of them are, like, not too catastrophic, but they're cool. Some of them are very catastrophic, but they're lame. You know what I mean? Like, what are like, your top and bottom catastrophes, and you choose what metric you're going.
So we're going with, like, just general, earthquake, tornado, forest fire.
Yeah. Let's actually throw it. Let's say what catastrophe would you like to take you out?
If I was gonna get caught in some sort of natural disaster, you're thinking.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I'll even go first if you want.
Yeah, you shoot, because I need a sec.
I think
I have a good idea.
I think, like, a top tier disaster to take you out is probably like forest fires. We get those in British Columbia.
Always.
So you maybe where you're at, you're not super familiar, but basically they can travel, like, mega fast, like as fast as the wind goes. It's pretty quick. They can outrun cars, stuff like that, and it's like huge towers of flame that surround you, and it's bad.
It's hell.
So, yeah, literally, like, same, yeah. But if it, like, I do not want to die that way. It sounds bad. However, it's really metal. It's so, like in not a good way. It's very dope.
Is this your way of telling me you want to be cremated?
Actually, I have thoughts. But yeah, they're like a top tier natural disaster, not because they're good. They're actually super awful. Surprise, surprise.
I mean, I can't find any good ones, but you're right. Like, it is a bad time. Yeah,
they're like, so by the metric of how, like, unpleasant that would be to be in and how dope they are, that's up there.
Yeah, fair enough.
I think,
well, because, like, yeah, like you say, like, when you actually like, there's the fires in Australia.
Yeah.
Here we have fires every year. There was the ones up in Yukon like last year. And a family member of mine was driving through them to get out, like, because they were literally surrounded. So it was just like go, and they had video and stuff like that. And it's just literally actual
horrifying.
Hell. It's just literally actual hell. And I mean, I'm sure plenty of people have seen the Australian ones, or if you can just Google them, like, it was just the same, where it was just like, wow, this is literally an actual hellscape.
Yeah.
And so I see what you mean, because, like, yeah, it's definitely a horrible, terrible time.
Yeah. So for, like, the disasters, that's a top tier disaster.
Yeah.
Scary as hell.
Yeah.
Better than us as humans.
Yeah.
And really dope, but in a way that I don't like, but, like, just really
the
metal.
scariness,
like,
the scariness, I think, is the factor there.
Yeah, that's something, like, that's the kind of stuff that's on, like, Disturbed album covers and, like, you know, like metal, hard rock album covers, because it's metal as hell.
Yeah, no kidding.
Not a good time.
Well, so, like, the counter to that for me, and this is very poorly timed, because down south they're experiencing a lot of this. And, like, not to underplay this by any means, but holy shit, like, if you were gonna say fire or, like, tornado / hurricane, it's like, well, I'm gonna get blown over.
Yeah,
it's way worse than that. But like,
it's so much worse than that. But, like, on paper,
yeah.
You know?
I mean, like, it's like, oh, would you rather control air or fire?
Sure.
And, like, a lot of people would just pick fire because it's just cooler.
It's kind of cool. It's, like, inherently
even though the
cool.
air is more practical. And this is kind of the thing, is like, hurricanes, I feel like in general are more destructive than what even a big forest fire would be.
Yeah.
Because they cause so much more, because there's also flooding that comes
along.
with it.
And
like,
I think
speaking
flooding
of domino
is, like,
chains,
probably the worst portion of it for a lot of people. Because it'll blow out your power, and then all of a sudden now you're stranded in the middle of the ocean, basically. The ocean is at your house.
Yeah.
Scary.
But it's wind, though.
Yeah.
And so, like,
versus
just
towering columns of flame.
If we're talking, like, if we're going with the metal factor, I would put hurricanes low on the metal factor. Yeah. But not any lower on the disaster factor.
Totally. No, they're still horrific.
Yeah.
However, I want to do, like, for my bottom, and this is not to downplay it, because people die from this regularly still, but mudslides, not very metal. So I would not.
Well, they're also not very large scale. Like, you can have a huge hurricane, you can have a huge forest fire, but, like, mudslides, they're big, but, like, it's all coming from one place. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so, like, there's only so much on top that you can make fall down. Yeah.
Yeah. But that is one, like, natural disaster that I don't want to get caught in, because it's not very metal, it's not very dope, and it'll kill you just the same. So I don't want to die by that, because it is not, I guess, kind of respectfully as cool of a story, I guess, as, like, hurricane, or, I mean, these are all bad, but like forest fire, hurricane, something like that, like, it's just not as metal. So that's the metric that I've chosen to go by.
Yes, no, totally. Now, hear me out. What I would put in my very top of S tier, and I'm not sure if you would consider this, but crushed by a meteor.
Yeah, you know what? That deserves it.
Yeah, I was gonna say
that's it's not supernatural, but like, that's almost above natural.
Yeah, exactly.
Disaster.
It's like that thing came from across existence specifically to
get
fuck with
your
you.
ass.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
like that. Like, people talk about, like, lightning being God's way of smiting. I'm like, no, this is Cthulhu's way of smiting you. Yeah. Like, just like
the old ones.
Yeah, exactly. One of the old ones just shoots a 3 and crushes you. And but yeah, that was the first thing that came to my mind. Especially because if you're talking about dying to it, I'm like, that's fucking instant. Yeah. And also, like, you get to see the flash, you're like, holy fuck. And
there's also not anything you can do about it, so there's not, like, panic, right? Because, like,
you could try and run, but it's like, it depends on the size of it and everything like that. Like, I mean,
ooh, yeah, what if you got a little one and just went right through your eyeball?
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, you'd explode still. and you'd probably disintegrate. But
pretty metal still.
That sounds pretty fucking metal.
A big
I gotta sell.
That's as metal as it gets. The dinosaurs figured that one out.
the dinosaurs fucked around and found out. Yeah, exactly.
See, the meteor was the first thing that came to my mind too, but I wasn't sure if that qualified as a natural disaster.
Well,
I don't know if it's necessarily like natural, but I think that it should count.
Yeah. Well, It's no, I think it's a natural disaster. It's not an earthly disaster.
Yeah, we didn't make it.
Yeah,
I hope not. So what's your bottom? Do you think?
Bottom, I don't know. Mudslide's pretty down there because again, they're just like you can get a big mudslide, but I think in the grand scheme of scale, like they're
it's
limited,
much more minor than a hurricane or something. Yeah,
and it's like you can even say that about like a avalanche.
Yeah,
it's like
true,
same thing but cold.
Yeah, and honestly, I think maybe a little cooler, like because
literally,
yeah. But because, like, mud is icky and gross.
Yeah, you could at least be snowboarding at the time.
Yeah. Mud is not very dignified. It's icky. It's going to get in your lungs. It's going to be a bad time. Actually, drowning in mud, straight up, that is the least, like... That's the way I least want to die.
Yeah, I think the general human consensus is that drowning is one of the worst ways to die.
But in mud, because it's all thick and stuff too.
Well, yeah, exactly, and it tastes gross.
Yeah,
and then you get like one of those bugs. You get one of those weird bread worms, and it's just like,
yeah.
Damn it, the lady told me about these.
The bugs are the worst part.
Yeah,
yeah.
No, one that might be kind of controversial.
All right, bring it.
Shoot.
Global warming, would that count?
Come on, man. That's an overarching, like, that's all of them at this point.
I mean, you can just file that. If you're going to try and look for one that it would file under, I would say probably fire.
Yeah,
the hurricanes
fire,
are there, though.
Well, the wind also and stuff.
Yeah, those
kind of gets them all.
Those two would be, like, at least the ones I would correlate it to, like, sure.
I mostly just think of, like, the ice caps melting and the whole Earth flooding with that.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, now it's...
Global warming is the avatar of natural disasters. Yeah. It's got all four elements.
Yeah. And it's also not natural. Sorry, everybody.
I mean, I think this is why they stopped using the term global warming, though, because like the globe does warm and cool, and so it's not exactly the right. Like even climate change is kind of like the same thing but different. Like there's, if you want to make it man-made, then I feel like you got to put man-made in the title.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like, yeah, it's just like global warming. It's like, well, yeah, the globe does get warm, but like. The reasons are the point.
Yeah. That being said, we probably shouldn't talk about that.
No kidding.
What's the word? Or sorry, the bottom of the bucket for natural disasters.
Well, I mean, you kind of had me at mudslide, like realistically.
Yeah. I sold you
just
on it.
because it's so small scale, and it would absolutely be a bad time. But it's like
100%.
on the metal scale, it's way down there.
Totally. Because not to downplay it, like that, it's still super deadly, but. It's just not, like, as metal. It's not as cool.
What do you guys think about sinkholes?
Kind of cool.
It's the same thing, but in reverse.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that's kind of cool. Because, like, the earth opened just to get your ass. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's instead of the earth rocking a piss.
Yeah.
No, I think you kind of sold me on mudslides. I can't think of anything else that would be... like more or less like everything else is going to be mid-tier like you're talking about the big one like earthquake and stuff like that, but a real like I'd say earthquake is so mid because what's going to kill you is
disaster itself. It's the fact that all of the buildings are falling over now.
Well, yeah, exactly. Or even if it causes a mudslide, for example, like, and it causes tsunami. So it's like, okay, throw flood in there. It feels so general almost, or it affects so many things that way that you're kind of like, okay, where am I at here? Yeah. If you're thinking earthquake that like opens up Land Before Time style,
that's pretty dope.
Yeah,
that's metal.
That's different, but it feels too broad for you to actually like put it. Like I'm anywhere from, if we're going tier list, like it's anywhere from C to A.
Yeah.
And so
although
it's like,
I will say, if the mega thrust, the big one, earthquake in parentheses,
I admit mega thrust is awesome.
Pretty cool. But if like I was at that subduction zone and I was scuba diving and then the tectonic plate flicked up and atomized my ass, that's cool.
Either that or just fucking Looney Tunes like
that's
Team Rocket like ding.
Yeah, that would be top tier, but I feel like I'm not going to be... Why would I be scuba diving in the Cascadia subduction zone? I don't want to be there.
I would love to scuba dive. I want desperately to scuba dive. I heard of a job that I want that is a horrible, dangerous job that nobody wants.
Bring it on. Is it deep sea welding?
Basically.
Yeah, let's go.
It's not though. It's
What did they? Sorry,
No.
There's
Shoot.
saturation welding or saturation diving or something like that.
I think it's basically it's like welding and stuff like that, but it's basically like the oil rigs that go down forever.
Yeah.
There's people doing maintenance on the bottom.
I think that's
and they
the
are
saturation
down,
divers.
and they are down there for weeks at a time in the depths.
Yeah, because you have to like decompress or get used to it or whatever, and then decompress or adjust or whatever, and then adjust, and then on the way back up,
it's the same thing.
It's the same thing. So you go down like a certain amount a day. And
I think they bring you up in a pressurized pod, but you have to stay within that pod for like a day. As it slowly releases.
Ooh, I think I may have heard a story. I may be just like completely making this up, or maybe it was a creepypasta, but I think I heard about some people who did that, and then somebody accidentally depressurized the pod, and it just killed everybody.
No, yep, that's exactly.
That's real?
No, that's real. I was actually going to bring that up.
Brutal, man.
Yeah, it's scary as shit. But this is the thing, though. It's like it's so horrifying, but it was like it's so instant.
It's super instant.
Like again, bringing up horrible, awful things that have happened in the last like year or two. There's the submarine that everyone knows about.
Yeah, the Titania or
I don't
whatever.
think I know about the submarine.
You don't know about the submarine thing? It was huge.
If I don't get my news from Bill, I don't get news.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
I'm sure I told you about it though. But either way, so yeah, to sum it up for Corey and anyone else who doesn't know, the three other people, there is a very shabby, very badly made submarine that would take rich people on trips to the Titanic to take a look, and I think it made a couple of trips, and had problems each time. And the biggest meme about the whole fucking thing is the fact that it was controlled by a Logitech controller. Not even it's just aftermarket.
Yeah.
Fucking anyway.
I will say they do
this,
use game controllers for things like billion-dollar drones and stuff as well. But it's not a good look, is it? To be like, oh, I'm taking y'all down in the middle of the ocean on my, like, Mad Dog's ass.
Yeah, but I feel like controlling a drone...
And you're not in it, at the very least, right?
Yeah, well, this is kind of the thing, is like, when you picture submarine...
Yeah.
There's a lot more to it than ABXY. This is you're controlling a drone. Okay, totally. It's just like a video game.
Yeah.
But this is a little less. A
little more sensitive. You wouldn't maybe be wrong for wanting something more reliable.
I would even go for a decent brand. Like you get like an Xbox or PlayStation actual controller, but you couldn't even spare that expense. Like what the fuck are you talking about? Nonetheless, point being, horrifying, but everyone died. Instantly, which is the one redeeming factor. Exactly, is the fact that depressurization isn't like somebody close up the gap. It's just
you
bam,
won't
you're
even
done.
finish your thought that you were thinking before it happens.
No, exactly. And so same thing with those people. The worst part about that one that was way down there was the fact that it was human error. Because the guy just didn't do the sealing correct as far as I know, and then just bam. And I mentioned this to you earlier before we were recording, because that's how I heard about that. Is the fact that often, call me weird, I will listen to, not any other type, I will listen to creepy deep sea stories before going to bed. Because I find it helps me sleep. I don't like any other variety of creepy stories before sleeping or anything like that. Specifically stuff to do with the ocean, because I am obsessed with deep sea life and the like.
And deep sea death.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. So I don't know why, but that is basically how I had heard of that. Yeah, and it was also hearing about that sort of job. But this is the thing, is you ever heard of the Call of the Deep?
Yes, in theory, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So off the top of my head, I was actually gonna say the call of the deep is like the deep calls to you, and that's why you keep.
Kind of does.
Yeah, but so correct me if I'm wrong, but the call of deep is like some kind of like hysteria or mania or something like that comes over people, and then they just like start swimming down, right?
Now yes. Now there's reasons for it to happen, or there's just people being crazy.
Yeah.
Like that. It's what you would call the call of the deep is something a little bit more broad, but it's a common thing, semi-common. Like you don't want it to happen, and you take the proper safety protocols to prevent this from happening. But basically, it's something to do with like oxygen deprivation or saturation. I forget which. In your tanks that causes you to feel like this. People describe it as feeling like they're kind of drunk. But that's how it feels, but it acts a little differently.
I think because I've watched my fair share of like those cave diving stories. I think that like too much oxygen makes you sleepy, and not enough oxygen makes you feel like that drunkenness. And then that's what gets a lot of people in diving situations.
That's what a lot of the, like, if you're just listening to YouTube reads Reddit stories or whatever, like of these variants, like creepy underwater stuff, many of them are just diving with a person, they're experienced and I'm experienced, but just someone slipped up, and like they'll just like look at you and you look at them and you're like, oh, he looks like a little weird, like a little off, but you're wearing like the full fucking gear. You can't see shit, but like you just notice something is kind of off, and then they just go down.
Yeah.
And like you can't chase them because they'll well, because again, like when you were mentioning like getting used to pressure and depressurizing, it's incredibly important. And so, like, if they're just on this trip down, you cannot follow, or unless you risk your life to also do so. Like, this is, like, people think space is bad, but like everyone, you constantly hear about the fact that we know more about space than we do about the ocean. The cool thing about space is you can watch it from here. This is the thing, is like, there's light in space. Like, you have to kind of find it, but it's there. But light stops, and you have the opposite problem. It's like, well, it's very, very cold and you'll depressurize in space, but you can't go very far without sturdy, like keep in mind, like rocket ships and space stations and stuff like that aren't resisting pressure. And so they can kind of deal with that. It's like, okay, we have to make something that at least keeps everything in. That's easy enough. But trying to keep the weight of like 10,000 fucking atmospheres out is incredibly difficult. And so we've managed to reach the bottom of the ocean, at least in our estimation, with Challenger Deep and the Marianas Trench. But
has anyone been to the bottom of Marianas Trench / Challenger Deep?
Yeah.
Okay.
There has been people who have gone down.
Okay.
It's very few, and like you don't get to like kind of chill and explore. Like it's like, okay, you touched down, congratulations. But no, people have reached it. It's just in these incredibly claustrophobic pods that are like built to withstand all of that, and there really isn't a ton of again, there's no means of like mobility or exploring or anything like that, because again, you're just kind of like dropped down. But just the this is going to sound incredibly dumb, but this sort of feeling has been that in the back of my mind ever since I played Subnautica. It's a game many people are familiar with.
Do it to you.
Yeah. But it was that, like, that game sort of like started it, because it's like, oh wow, deep sea, like you never know what's down there and stuff like that. That kind of started it, but the weird part is that it continued and got worse after I had stopped playing the game.
The call of the deep.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
Because, like the idea of being down into like the pitch blackness is everything is super scary, but it's so fascinating.
I mean, it is scary, but I could see it being comforting too. Like, you only have to worry about what's, within 5 feet of you. You can't see what's out there anyway, so why bother?
Yeah. Well, it's
either gonna get you or it's not. Right?
I mean, you could say that too about like the monster in your closet.
Yeah. He's either gonna get you or he's not.
Yeah.
You're not gonna change it by tucking your feet in. Sorry, everybody. I know. But
yeah, blankets have supernatural properties, and they put them in when they leave the
My
factory.
blanket was blessed by the Pope.
Yeah, exactly.
You cannot cross this threshold.
But so I'm so fascinated by that job because, and just like scuba diving in general, because it's like, it's scary as shit down there. I think water has always sort of had like this sort of mythological
Totally.
property to it, where it's like, it's both, and especially the ocean, it's like, it's both like the bringer of destruction and also bringer of like untold wealth at the same time. Is like
and food and salvation and
it's this two-sided coin where but it is both the most dangerous thing you can and powerful thing you can confront as a human on Earth, and also what will yield, you know, so many, like the bounty of knowledge or wealth. And I think that's kind of the idea, the root of the idea that I like so much about it is like, you never know what's down there, and it's so alien. It's more alien than people consider aliens to be.
Yeah, totally. Well,
And
I think honestly, like even most actual alien designs are kind of based loosely off of things from the ocean, right?
Well, yeah, definitely. Like so much, like crustaceans constantly and stuff like that.
Okay,
and,
wait.
And bioluminescence is just always there.
You've probably heard about this, but the everything turns into crabs thing?
I've heard of that. I don't really know what the hell anyone's talking about.
Okay, the idea is that crabs are the peak evolution.
The ultimate life form.
They're the ultimate life form.
They're Shadow the Hedgehog.
Because everything kind of slowly evolves to be more crab-like because they're perfect.
Yeah.
Like they have like the perfect defense. They have like, you know, like there's lobsters, and if you watch lobsters, they will eventually evolve to be more crab-like. Their tail will shorten because that's the place that like predators go for and stuff like that. Their claws will get a little bit bigger and sturdier. They'll get a little bit more like, you know, sideways or whatever, so that they are more defended on other like sides and stuff like that. Like everything just kind of slowly shifts towards crabs.
I can feel it happening in myself day
Yeah,
to
me
day.
too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even apples.
Yeah.
Crab apples?
Yeah.
It's already happening right before your eyes, people.
But yeah, the fucking Christ crabs, man. That really
Yeah.
but yeah, it's I think it's kind of that idea that makes me so fascinated with the ocean. Like, the idea of being surrounded by the darkness of it is both absolutely horrifying, but also fascinating. And I think it's the fact that it's scary that kind of makes it feel like if it wasn't scary, it wouldn't be fascinating anymore.
Yeah, totally.
It wouldn't be fascinating anymore, because it's also like the craziest things come from the ocean. The one thing that actually kind of blew my mind is just a general fact, is because like so you think of like just the general time that we're in now, and stuff isn't as big as like back in the days of the dinosaurs and stuff like that. You see that
Speak for yourself, buddy.
But yeah, you see that like bugs were huge back then because there was more oxygen in the air. Obviously, the dinosaurs are a great example of just these gigantic beasts that roamed the earth. And so you kind of just automatically assume, and especially hearing about the megalodon and everything like that, you're like, okay, whatever was the biggest was back then. No, the biggest animal that has ever existed exists right now. It is, as you probably know, the blue whale. The blue whale is the biggest animal that exists, and so you learn that in school. You're like, oh, biggest animal, blue whale, cool, good to know.
Nothing bigger ever existed?
No.
There weren't mega whales?
No.
What about like I've seen. Okay, yeah, no, you're probably right. I'm clutching for things because that's crazy.
Do you see why it's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
That doesn't sound right at all.
It's pretty big.
It's
pretty big.
It's gigantic. And so that's another thing that just like dove me deeper into the pun is there. I don't know if I intended or not. That like just blows my mind about the ocean. It's just, again, and makes me want to scuba dive is the fact that it's like, no, the biggest animal that ever exists right now, and you can see it. You can go and find it. The biggest living thing. Well,
you can touch it. You can hold it in your hand.
The biggest animal that's ever. Yeah, exactly. You can hold it in the palm of your hand.
You could. You could give it a taste.
give it a little punch. Just get punched right in the eye.
Yeah.
But yeah, the biggest animal that has ever existed exists right now, and that fucking blew my mind.
Yeah.
Because like, yeah, it's just like we can just go see that.
Yeah.
And then nothing else that's ever existed has held up. Who knows about the future? But
that's kind of a bummer. You know, you're like, you see a blue whale, and then you go, nothing has ever been or will ever be that big.
Yeah, I mean, there's like
I think
there's plants and stuff that have been bigger, so it's not like the biggest.
Yeah, what about those trees, like the mega tree, right? Where it's like,
I think the biggest thing that's existed is actually a mushroom.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the same thing as the trees, because like, I forget where this is. I think it's like in Appalachia territory of the U.S., where there's like this forest that is connected by mycelium or some kind of like mushroom or spore or whatever fungus, and like all of these trees roots are connected with these funguses or whatever, and so it's all like, or no, maybe these are different things, but anyway, like these like underground connections of like roots
that go for miles.
Yeah,
exactly. I think it's a mushroom if I remember correctly. I thought it was a tree, but it wouldn't make sense that way because trees, as far as like grass will grow on the surface but then grow under and grow again, and I think that's the case for these mushrooms, is they exist mostly underground, but this is the thing, is like the one entity of mushroom appears to be thousands of mushrooms to us on the surface, but in actuality it's actually just one that's been growing forever. That's really cool. But
I'm just kidding.
Forest fire.
Oh God!
Let it go out in the most metal way possible.
That's true. Yeah, we're doing it a service.
Yeah, but yeah. So it's not the biggest living thing ever, but like it's way cooler when it's a moving animal, and it's even crazier to think that's even within the same like family of like it's a mammal as well. It's just another thing. It's like go mammals.
Yeah. So speaking of sea creatures, flip side to the small side. Couple things about shrimps.
Yeah.
Number one, how do you feel about shrimps as bugs?
They're crustaceans, aren't they?
Yeah, they're bugs though.
Sure.
They're bugs.
Okay.
How do you feel about that?
Sure.
Okay, cool. What do you also think about the idea of shrimp being able to fry rice?
Like on their own?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Like they grab the pan or the rice cooker and they go.
Yeah.
Can they?
Yeah.
How?
You've never heard of shrimp fried rice?
I guess I have.
Yeah. Shrimp fried that rice.
That's a fascinating...
It just really makes you think.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah.
Makes me think about how whales are constantly eating those motherfuckers when they could be making me rice.
And they could be making you rice.
Yeah, no, it's krill I'm thinking of. Jesus.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I've never heard of krill fried rice.
No, there is no such thing. Krills are stupid.
Yeah.
Krills is bugs.
Yeah. But yeah, I love whales for that reason. They're one of my favorite animals, just because like that blew my mind specifically. But yeah, also just the idea of an animal that just walked out of the water, lived there for a bit, and was like, "This sucks," and then left.
Who did that?
Whales.
Like, you're telling me.
Well, like,
okay.
Evolutionarily,
every time I've ever seen a whale on the land, it's not looking so good.
Well, this is the thing: is like evolutionarily, they walked out. Like they came out on land and evolved with us as mammals, but this is the thing: is they slowly made their way back into the water.
Yeah,
first,
they probably saw taxes and were like, "I'm good."
Yeah, no kidding. They were like, "Oh, I'm just gonna go join the crabs."
Yeah,
Let's get closer to them.
You slowly evolve my way back to crabs. I would rather be a crab than pay taxes.
Yeah, but that's the thing. So like, yeah, they would develop like more water friendly features. Yeah. Until I think dolphins are from the same ancestor that eventually made its way back into the water, but this is why whales have fins, but they have the same they
got finger bones, don't they?
Yeah, they do. They even have I think vestigial leg bones.
That's really weird.
I think it was leg bones. They have just a set of fucking bones in there that are just useless now to them. Then they breathe air, but like the blowhole was their nose.
Yeah,
and it just moved farther and farther back up their head.
It's so goofy to think about those in-between stages of evolution.
Oh, yeah. Like,
but I guess, like, what kinds of things, like, maybe humans will evolve, and then they'll look back at us and be like, they look goofy as hell.
I mean, we in the grand scheme of the animal kingdom, we do.
Yeah.
We got these short-ass fucking faces.
Yeah.
Like...
But we got thumbs.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah.
Take that.
That was the thing. I discovered a new fear I had, and it wasn't... Scratch that. It was entirely water related.
Yeah, bro. Yeah, of course it was. Yeah.
No, learning about dolphins and killer whales. Those two in particular, because those are the two I learned about. The fact that they are so intelligent, and we know this, like the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy made the whole joke that they're the most intelligent species out there, and killer whales. Here's a fucking mind blow that you'll probably find on YouTube if you Google it, is the fact that killer whales actually teach each other things. Like, each pod, they can develop traditions that go generations, just like humans do. And even crazier is they actually kind of speak in, like, each pod, and especially if you find ones that are like live very, very far away from each other, they have dialects of speech. Like, they speak different killer whale languages in a way that make you... That just makes you think, like... Because you just think, oh, bears speak bear.
Yeah.
If I throw two bears together, they know how to bear it out.
Yeah.
But it's like, no, like... There's different dialects of killer whale, and they can teach each other things, which is something you kind of attribute almost exclusively to humans.
Yeah,
well, yeah, exactly. And so the idea, like, so there's the possibility that killer whales, dolphins, and the like are actually smarter than us, and there's a tad of evidence to sort of support this, in the fact that, like, there's been a big meme about, like, just being smooth brain.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're always told in school, it's not really the size of your brain that makes you smarter or dumber.
The depth of your ridges.
Well, that's sort of something that we're discovering a little bit more recently in the grand scientific scheme of things. It's not size that matters. It's the motion of the ocean. It's the creases and the wrinkles of your brain. And killer whales, way wrinklier brains than we have. And so this is the thing, is like, you kind of don't know, because you can't put a Rubik's Cube in front of a killer whale and call it a day. You have to, it's the fact that we're intelligent, but we have the unique pairing of abilities of the intelligence and the ability to manipulate the world around us that allows us to do what we do today. The sheer idea that we could have been, we're searching beyond the stars for stuff that's more intelligent than us, so that maybe we could have a fucking conversation about atoms or some shit. I don't know. But the idea that there's something that's been living on this earth for as long, if not longer than we have, that is smarter than us, is fucking horrifying to me.
Dolphins would have immediately identified if that dress was black and blue or white and gold.
Immediately.
Dolphins would have known if OJ did it.
Oh yeah, that would have been no question.
We need to start consulting. I almost said doctors for a second. I don't know why.
Dolphin doctors?
I went from dolphins to doctors.
Yeah, but I mean, hey, if we could have Dr. Dolphin...
Honestly, make them doctors.
But that... After I had learned that fucking horrified me.
Yeah, well,
and it just, like... And it wasn't like, I was like, oh, I was spooked. It was like this deeper level fear. I was like, have we been fucking with something that's smarter than we are, but we can just hold the pointy stick?
I got a couple of things.
Okay.
Although I forget what one of them was, so that's convenient.
Start with one and you'll come back to the other.
Okay, so yes, we've been fucking with things that are very smart. Maybe you've heard about the killer whales that have started taking out boats and stuff like that, because a bunch of people, like, so there's these, like, tribes or groups or whatever of killer whales that started getting sick of, like, their children being hit by boats. And so they started attacking boats.
Don't touch the butt.
Yeah. And then they started teaching other pods to, like, attack the boats before they get you back, or, like, whatever, that kind of thing. And so pardon me, I think it's kind of slowed down now, but there were, and probably still are, pods of killer whales targeting people's boats. And, like, different kinds of boats too, because it'll be like, you know, vacation yachts and that sort of thing, rather than like big old ocean freighters or something like that. But they straight up take out boats because they're getting sick of our shit.
Yeah, well, that's just another thing, is like the fact that they're able to teach each other. The one sort of tradition that really stuck in my brain, that there's only one pod that does this, and they teach it generation by generation, and not all of them do it because it's dangerous. So there's like chosen ones among every generation that know how to do this, and that's beaching themselves to get seals.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
They fucking sweat, like, and it's just one pod that does this. Someone figured it out, and then like he was the hero among them, and he taught it to the generations. It's fucking insane. Like, or they swim up and just like literally just beach themselves, but in a way where they kind of know how to wiggle their way back. They'll go up, grab a seal, and then just hop hop their way and wiggle their way back into the water. And this is the thing, is like any of them that know how to do this will teach it to the young. Yeah. And then the young will try it, and some of them are like, no, that's too much for me. I don't want to try and do that anymore. Yeah. And some of them love it. And just the idea that it's like that's such a human sounding trait.
There's a lot of things about it that like they're crazy smart. There's also like up in the north, there'll be like seals hiding on ice floes or whatever to stop them from eating them. Yeah. And then they're like, oh, you thought you were safe. And so we'll get like 3 of them to swim in a pattern,
like the wave.
And then create the wave, and then like it'll slide, and another one will be there waiting for it to slide into their mouth and stuff, or like get up on the ice as it dips below and then like flip the ice and stuff. They're crazy, man.
No, like that wrecked me on a deeper level.
I remember what the other thing was.
Yeah.
I honestly think that knowing that there's things that are smarter than you out there on this planet is a little bit of a comforting feeling, because now there's a little bit less pressure on you. Yeah. You know, humans are the smartest, and so we have to like keep working and keep being smarter. We're not going to be number one, guys, so let the dolphins have it and stuff. Like, there's less pressure on us.
Do you think the killer whales have like their own version of rock, paper, scissors on who gets to eat the seal off the ice shelf?
Yeah.
Like, because they would just always pick paper. Nice. So there's got to be some sort of
different... they got bones in there, dude.
Yeah, you know what?
They can't do scissors so well, but...
Yeah, I'm not even sure they know what rocks are.
You know what rocks are. There's rocks in the ocean.
Yeah, but they're like wet rocks, though. They're different.
It's totally different. Wet rock, paper, scissors. Wet rock, wet paper, wet scissors. It's so much... Wet paper is just like a pulp. Yeah. Like, oh man.
No, they do like plastic bottle.
Oh yeah. Yeah. 6-pack rings.
Yeah. Scissors. Yeah. Scissors. But it's like the safety scissors.
Yeah.
No, I'm sure there's plenty of scissors in the ocean.
There's plenty more scissors in the ocean. You'll get over it.
You'll find it. Yeah. But yeah, no, the freaking deep sea scares and fascinates me for many of those reasons. Like,
there's a million things that are both shocking, horrifying, and really dope about the ocean. Yeah. And I'm sure we could talk about it for 1 million years.
Dolphins do drugs.
Don't do dolphins, kids.
Did you know that?
Yeah. They'll like inject themselves with pufferfish and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
To get crazy.
That's just a little cherry on top right at the end there. Yeah. For any of you who didn't know, because this is a big meme, so I'm sure a ton of you do.
I didn't know.
No.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, it's crazy.
Oh, dude, no. Dolphins will literally go up to pufferfish and force them to have their like prey or their blow up. Yeah. And they'll, because they're like kind of resistant to the venom, not entirely. Yeah. It's kind
enough to just get a sweet little buzz.
Yeah, exactly. And so they'll literally
recreationally
do it, and then they get all loopy about it, and they do that like literally recreationally. Yeah. Again, another thing you're like, this is so human. Yeah. Recreational drugs. Yeah. Like we could go on forever. Yeah. I had to add the dolphin one in there for anyone who doesn't know.
But we're starting to get a little bit loopier here at the end. And also, looking at the clock, we've been chatting for a minute. So hopefully you've enjoyed us talking about unrelated stuff. This is kind of our spooky episode. It'll be coming out late October anyway. So we're talking about spooky things.
Shit that scares and fascinates us. Yeah.
But hopefully you've enjoyed listening or watching us do our little chit-chatting here. If you're watching on YouTube, we also have it on Spotify. If you're listening on Spotify, you can watch our weird faces move around as we say these things on YouTube. You can also follow us on Instagram if you want. But subscribe if you're enjoying what we're talking about. It'll be something different next time. Thanks for watching.
See ya.